Hey everyone, I just want to do a quick tutorial on Out of the Park Baseball 16 finances. I know that those that are new to the series can be overwhelmed when they look at the finance page because it is a lot to take in, and it's a very important part of building your team too. You need to understand how much money you have and how you earn that money and what will happen to your budget and revenue and everything if you were to overspend or whatnot, and if you didn't drive in enough fans, stuff like that. It's very important, obviously, to the growth of a franchise. So this screen right here, the finances screen, it's a very, I think, straightforward screen. You see your budget, that's how much you can spend. You see the payroll, that's how much you're paying your players. You see money for free agents, that's how much you can spend this season. Money for extensions is how much money you have available to you next season. And then it shows your current budget. Everything else on here is very straightforward. You can click these little arrows, little drop down boxes, and change all of these. So it's very customizable, and I think it is a great tool to use. Make sure you definitely use these to tailor the screen to how you see fit. And I think that I'm gonna touch base on a little bit about market size, fan loyalty, and interest. With fan interest and loyalty being high, you can drive up your ticket prices if you choose. And after years of driving up your ticket prices, you will have created so much revenue that your market size will increase as well. So, you definitely have to change the ticket prices to your interest, but with this new OOTP 16, you can only change the ticket prices in the preseason and in the off season. So make sure you have it set to a number that you like and that your fan interest is corresponding to that number, because you will not be able to change it and it can make you suffer. So this screen is very straightforward, and I don't think I need to elaborate too much on it. Now, what they added in Out of the Park Baseball 16 that was not in previous versions is the accounting page. And this is where stuff can get pretty wonky and confusing because it's a lot of information thrown at you all at once and it's a lot to take in. So, what we're going to do is we're going to start with the leftmost column and just work our way over. Okay? And to begin, we have the budget, and then you have the previous balance. And the previous balance is what your total balance was from the previous year. So you can see that the balance that we had here was 38 million. So that was whatever we finished the season before. Our total balance was that much. So then you can see right here, this number is the same as this number. Okay, and right now I'm in the off season. So it says 2021 is last year, but that's actually the fiscal year, if that makes sense. So the 2021 fiscal year is now over in this file because it is now the off season. So even though it's still technically 2021, this counts as last year. So none of this over here is actually like up to date. It is only this is what we're going off of, is what I did my previous season, which is technically the same year. It was just the 2021 season is now over because I'm in the off season. So anyways, you'll see that the previous balance was the total balance that we finished the year on from the previous year. Revenue sharing is luxury tax. So all it means is that this team finished on the bottom half in spending, and they were awarded 2.8 mil. And cash from owner is how much the owner will take away and how much cash they'll leave you with. So if you were to take this number and add it with this number and then subtract it by that number, then you will get this number, if that makes sense. So you can see right here they break it down plus and minus, plus and minus. Obviously, if it's green, you plus, if it's red, you minus, and then it equals that. So that's how everything's broken down here. Okay, starting balance is your cash. That's how much you have. Cash is actually, I'll dive into that. So if you have a budget of 178 and you have cash of 6 million, you can actually spend 184 million. That's how much money you can go over your budget. Okay, and it's also used to sign like draft picks, like Rule 5 draft picks, stuff like that. So you can go over your budget or even sign like Rule 5 draft picks with the cash. So that is all for that part. We're going to go into the revenue. Gate revenue is how much you made off of fans buying the tickets as opposed to the season ticket revenue. Season tickets are new to this game. It's, I think, introduced in OOTP 16, and I think that number is locked in the first day of spring training. It might be the first. It might be the pre. I think you have in the preseason you can change it, but once you hit spring training and the preseason's over with, this number is locked in, and that is the same for the ticket price. You can change it in the off season and in the preseason, but as soon as you hit spring training, or as soon as the preseason ends, then okay, so yeah, the preseason ends when spring training begins. So you will not be able to change that when you hit the first day of spring training. It'll be locked in. Okay, so this is the number from the tickets sold by walk-ins. This is the season ticket holders. Playoff revenue, self-explanatory. It's how much money you made in the playoffs. Media revenue. Okay, media revenue can be based off of your market size. So we're big, so we're going to get a lot from the media. And this is dependent on your game and what your settings are. But if you go here into your financial settings, you can see national media contract fixed, no, based on market size, and the same thing with the local media contract. So your local media contract is, and your national media contract is all going to be based off of your market size. And you can see here merchandising revenue baselines. The way that the game works is that there are baselines in place, and then baseline is like an average, and then it changes. You'll see how far above or below the baseline you are based on your market size and things of that sort. So with us in the Philadelphia Phantoms, we are a big market size, and we're going to get more than the baseline in media revenue. And this is given to you in the beginning of every, like the first day of the off season. It's given to you like day one of the off season. Okay, so you can see here in year to date 92.5 million for media revenue, because this is the first day of the new fiscal year, so this is the only amount of money that I have been given. Okay, the merchandising revenue, that is how much merchandise you sold, like shirts, bobbleheads, anything else team related. That is directly correlated to loyalty and interest in your fans. And that is all for the revenue. So then we get to expenses. Player expenses is your player payroll. Draft expenses is how much you spent on signing all of your picks. Player development expense, that is usually subject to change in the preseason. However, in this specific file, it is controlled by the owner. So if you go here, player development, you'll see I can't change it because he's decided to control it. Okay, so that's why it says here we go. That's why it says here that it's an expense to date and it's locked in on the first day of the off season. It's because the owner decides to control that in this file. That's not every file, it's just this specific scenario. Okay, there's an option in finances where you can have the owner not decide over the budget, and then all of your revenue will be available. And then there's also a decision to whether you want to have a cash maximum or not. And then you can change the revenue sharing and stuff like that. But we're not going to talk too much about that. We're just going to go straight on what we see here and explain everything that we see. So miscellaneous player expenses is if you were to cut a player. And so say I had a player with like a $5 million contract left and I just don't want him on my team, I would cut him. In this scenario, I had a player with 7.985, or maybe I had multiple players whose contracts I cut. That added up to 7.985 million. So that's just basically cut expenses. And I believe if you were to spend money on international free agents in July or August, whenever that is. I don't actually remember when international free agents are. Then that will also show up here, I believe. I didn't do it in this file, so I'm not entirely positive, but I believe that it shows up here. And then you just add up all these numbers, and that'll give you your subtotal. And you can see here, plus sign, minus signs, equal sign, gives you that. And then you add in the cash from trades. So we lost 5.4 million in trades in the previous year. We had nothing else. We had no miscellaneous player expenses, so that didn't add in. And you got a season profit loss of this number right here. And that left our total balance to be that number right there. So that is basically pretty much that's the whole thing. You just go down and it shows you every little thing as an equation. And you can see with budgeting is like a projection. So things like your budgeted budget, it's not going to change. If you have a budget of 178 million and that's what's budgeted, that's what you have. You have 178 million for that season. Okay, the previous balance is this number right here. As you can see, that's what we started with. Then you get the revenue sharing. The owner decided that we do not need 69 million. So they took away 55, and then it left us with this number right here. Okay. And then you go down to what we're expecting. See, this is where the difference between budget and year to date. We're expecting to have no less fans and season tickets generated than from the year before. We're expecting to have more because this is a playoff team. They're coming off the playoffs for the first time, so they're expecting to be no less. So this is what they're budgeting. So this is all just a projection. It's nothing definite. It's just a projection. Okay. The media revenue, as I said before, is given to you on day one of the offseason. So that is a year-to-date thing. So you can see starting balance is also done on the first day. So that is also a year-to-date thing. And then you look at merchandising. That's just budgeted. We don't expect it to have any less than what we did the previous year. So the budgeted revenue is 183. What we currently have already earned is 92.5 from the media revenue. Then you go down to the expenses. This is all what's budgeted because this is all that we have on our payroll as of right now. So when free agency is done, there could be more or there could be less when the offseason ends. You never know. The draft expenses, we budgeted 7.5 million, which just means that when we're looking at what we think our profit and loss will be and what we think our balance will be, we're expecting to spend 7.5 million in drafting. Now, like I said, this is a projection and it's subject to change. So we could spend more, we could spend less. You could, have up a little bit less of a total balance if you spend more money in the draft, or you could have more of a balance if you spend less in the draft. Player development, as I said before, is locked in. Miscellaneous player expenses, we have none budgeted right now. Obviously, we have not cut anybody, so we have none, and we're not expecting to, so it's not going to be budgeted. If we do cut somebody that is expected to make money, it'll be right here in the year-to-date. So we have budgeted 68 million in expenses as of right now, just a projection. When you look at our player payroll, and then you look at our expenses, well, then you add it with the rest of the expenses, you get this number. We're expected to profit this much. And the only reason that this is budgeted as 7.5 million in player expenses is because we had cut players with money on their contract from the previous season. So this is taking effect from the previous season. As you can see here, since we had cut those players, we're paying for it now, if that makes sense. And then we move on to the next year. This is this is almost entirely accurate. It'll change, but for the most part, if you're like in September, whatever this number says is what you're going to get for next year. And then you have, this is all budgeted. We're expecting similar results in attendance and media and merchandising and all that. And then again, this is all just a projection for next year. And then this is a projection for the year after that. So that is the accounting page, and those are the little tricks and stuff you can do with the finance page. It's all pretty straightforward, and if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.